Hi there, folks. It's David O. in overcast but bright Karmiel. It's Parsha NOACH, coming up to the middle of October, the beginning of Cheshvan, the only month that doesn't have a national holiday in it. Well, actually, it does. National holiday is my two sons' birthdays. Both fall in October and Cheshvan together. So that's enough for me to celebrate. Parsha NOACH, we're going to talk about a little bit today. It is the first Parsha of the year that really stands by itself, because Bereshis finds its way into Simchas Torah and anticipates the year, but NOACH is, in a way, the beginning. The flood, the Tower of Babel. NOACH is a very interesting Parsha. It prefaces something that we often see later on in the Torah. Rabbi Eliezer Breitowitz likes to refer to it as the NASA mid-course correction. That is to say, if you launch a rocket, a space probe, from Florida towards the moon or towards Mars, or Venus for that matter, after it exits the atmosphere, there's a very good chance there will be a slight error in its direction. And that slight error at that moment, which could be very small, turns into hundreds of thousands of miles as it continues to grow. And so after the projectile has left our atmosphere, the controllers at NASA have to do what they call a mid-course correction somewhere along the way to turn it so it's right on target for where it's supposed to land. God does that more than once in the Torah, and we'll talk about it as we go forward. But here is the first one. He's created the universe. Garden of Eden, a perfect place. Man sinned, Adam sinned, and Chava sinned. They're kicked out of the garden, right? And things go from bad to worse. By the time Noah comes around, the world is become completely corrupt. Everything. The land, the people, the animals, everything has been corrupted. God sees that it can't be fixed easily, and decides, I will destroy the world. And this one fellow, Noah, right, I will preserve with one of each species, more of the kosher ones, and we'll start again. And with a partner, with Noah as my partner in this process. And so it happens, and the flood happens. It goes on for virtually a year. It takes... it's a disaster, and everything is wiped off the face of the earth by water. Now it's time to rebuild. And the cause of the destruction of the world was a thing called Hamas. Hamas is a kind of theft. It's a kind of world in which you put your own needs entirely before all others. Some people might call it a kind of craziness, but now that we're living in the world of the iPhone and the iPad and the iThis and the iThat, maybe we understand it a little better. So the question that is often raised about the flood is, why the flood? He could have hit the earth with a meteorite. He could have caused an electrical storm to destroy the world. Earthquakes, tsunamis, all kinds of possibilities. But for some reason, God chose to destroy it with water, and he chose that the Savior and the rebuilding of the ark would be left up to Noah and his family, who would spend a year in the ark. Raises another question. Why didn't God put him on top of the Himalayas? You know, they're higher than Mount Ararat. Maybe they were never submerged. I don't know. Some say that Israel itself was never submerged. With the rainy season coming, we're hoping for some submersion. The question is why this technique that Noach and his family would spend a year virtually as zookeepers, taking care of the surviving animals on the ark. And maybe that's the key to it. Right? It's said that Noach and his sons, family, didn't sleep for that year. It makes sense if you think about it. Some animals are nocturnal, some animals are day animals, some animals eat in the morning, some animals eat at night. There was no time when the animals weren't demanding their food. There's a famous story told that before they left the ark, Noach was late bringing the lion his food, and the lion literally tore his arm off. And Noach said, "How can you do that? I'm feeding you. You don't do that to the hen that feeds you." And the lion said, "You were late." And Noach said, "Okay, I was late, but my arm." And the lion said, "I'm the last lion. You can't be late for me." And this is symptomatic of how the last raven and the last eagle and the last squirrel and the last dog and the last cat felt. They all felt very special and that they had to be taken care of. And so what happened? Noach and his family, the people who would restart the human race after the flood, understood that the cause of the flood was this I world in which if I am stronger than you are, then I can take what is yours. That was the morality of the day. So the more powerful a person was, the more wealth and the more power they had. Right? The stronger physically that they could do this. Because there wasn't such a thing left in the world as morality, which is, you created this, it's yours, you know, you grew this, you can sell it, you can eat it, right? It's whoever comes onto my farm and takes my produce gets it, right? There was no due process, so to speak. And there was no basis of due process, which is the idea that individuals can own something, and that ownership needs to be respected. So Noach may have had a tiny bit of this in himself. Now remember, compared to Moshe Rabbeinu or compared to Abraham, it said that Noach was a tzaddik in his generation. Probably the first biblical left-handed compliment. That he was a tzaddik, but would he have been a tzaddik in the world of Abraham or the world of Moshe? That's a longer discussion. But what was his flaw? We understand that one of his flaws was, unlike the behavior of Abraham or the behavior of Moses, Noach was concerned about the welfare of his family. He was concerned about doing the will of God, but he didn't seem very concerned about trying to persuade the locals to change their ways. Okay, if God's going to destroy them, he'll destroy them. If they change their ways, they'll change their ways. But he didn't say, "My friend, the world is going to be destroyed," except in the Bill Cosby audio piece, which is of disrepute these days. But Noach didn't say to the people, you know, be careful because God is going to destroy the world unless you change your ways. He made sure that his ways were perfect, his family's ways were perfect, and that he was obedient to God, but didn't take a responsibility for the human race. This does indicate a certain level of I-ness here. And so God said, in order that I make a mid-course correction for the human race, when they start again, this ego will be not this 1-1-1, everything for me thought process will not be prevalent, because it will be based on a family that has learned it doesn't work. And how will I teach this family? I will teach this family by training them for a year as pure chesed, kindness. They will be taking care of animals for that year without regard to themselves at all. That's all they will do. Be zookeepers for a year, day and night, nonstop, and learn what it is truly to serve, as opposed to be served. And so he put them on the ark for that year, and it was not easy. Now, the results of it was perhaps all too effective, because what was the next disaster? The next disaster was the whole world became united with one goal. Coming back to the NASA idea, some say that the moonshot for Jack Kennedy was an effort to unite the American people for a technological dream, vision. Some say that Henry V cemented the United Kingdom by challenging the French, most famous at Agincourt. So national visions, national goals often unite a country. Well, the Tower of Babel did unite the whole world. Everybody spoke the same language. Everybody had one focus. And they made it even more difficult than you could imagine. If you're going to build a tower to heaven, where would you start? At the highest mountain. It's the shortest distance. No. They started in a valley. And they sacrificed, and they built, and they built. People died for it. People were buried in it. But this vision continued until God understood they are so united, but tragically they are united in a bad cause, one of challenging my wisdom, my rulership. And so he made them less united at that point, more focused on their own group needs by changing and mixing up their languages. Now, this brings us to the almost the end of the story, but the lesson is very interesting. Countries either subsume individual interest for the interest of the group. Most famous are communism or socialism. China, Russia comes to mind. Venezuela comes to mind. Or they are filled with tremendously independent individuals with very little interest in the other, but more just in their own selves or their tribe. Judaism walks a fine line here, and I think is one of the great examples to national ethos. That is that Jews and Jewish nations and Jewish states and Jewish communities are always made up of tremendously powerful individuals and visionaries. And yet, the power of the Jewish nation itself is equally binding and powerful. That is to say, it is a nation of leaders. This is the philosophy of the Jewish Defense Force, that every soldier has the ability to become a leader should his leader be lost in action. Jewish soldiers lead from the front, officers from the front, not from headquarters. This is also true of the state. It's a very famous joke, I think perhaps told by Golda Meir, but I'm not sure, to an American president who explained how difficult it was to be the president of 250 million people. And she said, "Mr. President, that may be difficult, but think of my situation. I am the prime minister of 7 million presidents. Much harder." So I think that means we should think of ourselves always as a worthy individual, as presidential material, and at the same time with the humility to know that we're here to serve the other and the nation. I'll leave you with that thought. By the way, just between you and I, we were told that today we're expecting thunderstorms. That would be our first big rain this year. So we're only hoping for it. As you can see behind is the frame of the sukkah. We're not sure exactly what's going to happen with it. We may put a different walls on it and kind of use it during the better weather in the winter. But that's up to the Rebbitzin at the end of the day. Wishing you all Shabbat Shalom. Looking forward to seeing you next week as Cheshvan moves on. Shabbat Shalom.